Hi, everyone. So we did our project on a movie called The Farewell. Uh, in this group, it's me, Cassandra, and Jacob. So basically what this movie is about a young Chinese American woman named Billy who moved to the USA when she was about 6 years old. Um, Basically what the plot of this movie is about is uh, Billy finds out from her family that her grandmother is diagnosed with cancer. And the plot starts to settle in when we find out that Billy wants to tell her that she is diagnosed with this terminal illness and that she only has a few months to live. I think it's about 6 months around there, the movie states. But her family wants to keep it a secret from her. And because of this, we start to see different values, beliefs, basically different cultures start to clash because considering that Billy moved to the USA when she was 6, she basically assimilated into US culture where, her family's from the East, which has a totally different set of cultural values and beliefs than they do in the West. So one of our examples, we'll get to see how they communicate. It's an interaction between Billy and her father and her uncle, and basically they lay out the whole plot. And let me just go ahead. Are you serious?
Billy, 活不违背这样的意愿。Billy，有些事情你得明白。你们很早就去西方国家了，因为你把生命看成是个体的。这正是西方和东方的文化差异问题。东方人是把生命看作是集体的，家庭、社会。你想告诉奶奶的事情，是因为怕担责任，因为这个责任太大了。如果你告诉了他，你就没有负担了。我们之所以不告诉奶奶事情，就是为了分担她的思想压力。
Okay. All right, so going back to our presentation. So the first issue that we get to see displayed in this scenario is low context versus high context communication. So for Billy, we can obviously see that she's very distressed and sad about the whole situation. And in the West, displaying emotion is kind of seen as a norm. However, in the East, in Chinese culture, people tend to hide it more. They don't really like to explicitly say that how they're feeling. They kind of like to hide it within their face, which is why it's called high context communication, because you have to kind of understand what's the context in which they are interacting between each other. So, and we kind of start to see how individualism and collectivism comes in, which is our next issue. We can see in the scenario when Billy, or when Uncle Haben was telling her, you want to tell her because, you're the one that's feeling guilty. And if you do tell her, that burden will be lifted from you. So he's basically implying that Billy is ultimately just thinking about herself and not how Nai will feel when she hears the news. So Haben basically saying, we're doing it because we don't want to have to put that burden on Nai. We want to carry the burden ourselves as a family because we want her to live a good life until her time does eventually come. So we kind of see where the individualism comes in with, how Billy's cultural values being like, oh, well, I'm feeling guilty and I will only feel better once I tell Nai Nai. And, Uncle Haben is like, no, don't do that, because in Chinese culture, it's about maintaining the family harmony. Because if you tell her, you're going to disrupt that harmony. So, and that also goes into my next intercultural communication issue. This one's a little indirect, but I've noticed when I was analyzing the scene and basically the entire movie, I noticed that Billy is too focused on the future. She's too focused on a set date. For example, like Nai Nai passing away, she's too worried about when that time will come. And in Western culture, it's a very monochronic culture, which basically means we see time as linear, objective, uh, and we're always kind of perceiving when the next thing will happen. Whereas in Chinese culture, it's very polychronic, where they don't really worry about the past or the future. They only worry about the now and the present. And in this case, in the movie, the Billy's family are worried about, they're more focused on the fact that Nai Nai is still here. They're not worried about her dying in the future. They're worried about that she's alive now, and worrying about her dying will ultimately, like I said in the previous slide, disrupt the family harmony. So they're just appreciating the time that they have with her now, whereas Billy is too, strung up on, when Nai Nai is going to pass away. And that's where we kind of see like the clash of cultures start to, collide. So I will go ahead and pass the torch to Cassandra for this slide.
All right, so again, we want to emphasize the main communication style used in the movie, which is indirect style. They really want to preserve the harmony of the relationships. That is the biggest priority than being honest. And obviously the biggest example in this is how the whole family knows that Nai Nai is dying. They pretend as if she's healthy and that everything's okay so that she can continue to live a normal and happy life. And they don't want her to dwell on the fact that she's sick. They would rather maintain the harmony than ruin it. But the family does reveal that Nai Nai had done the same thing to her late husband. She hid his medical issues from him so that he could live a normal, happy life for as long as he could. And this kind of thing is super common in China. Doctors actually encourage it. And, this is something way different. This would never fly in the United States. It's considered illegal. And yes, that they're living a lie, but overall they have the best intentions for Nai Nai. Because she as an individual represents the entire family. And then we can move on to the next slide.
Throughout this beautiful yet saddening film, we see the main character, Billy, undergo a series of emotions. Her character develops quite a bit throughout the film. For example, her feelings towards white lies are interesting to depict. At the start of the film, we see her telling little lies about how she is wearing a hat, even though she's not. When she says she's comfy at home, even though we know her feelings about home. During the movie, we see this change in Billy when she is told she will have to keep the fact that her Nai Nai is passing away from her Nai Nai. It is clear that the change in cultures is a little overwhelming at first because where she lives is very modern American and her Nai Nai lives in China where it is very colorful and beautiful. And it is tradition for the family to choose whether to tell the individual that they are dying in the critical condition. We also see the difference in how Billy, her family, and her Nai Nai view life and death in the film. This is evident when Billy first hears her family's plans and is not initially interested in keeping her grandmother's health a secret, to really become distraught. And she ends up becoming very distraught because of it. Another example is when her parents think it is natural and hard towards the end. Nai Nai keeps saying that little things like, I walked the path of life, and I have to say, you will face difficulties, but you have to have an open mind. But don't be like a bull hitting its horns all over the walls of the room. Life isn't just about what you do, it's more about how you do it. It becomes saddening and very hard for Billy because her and her family are very much enjoying their trip, but she feels that it is almost all a lie because of Nai. Because to Nai, the family is just visiting for a wedding, but everyone knows deep down why they are truly there. And for Billy, that is way too hard to accept.
So in conclusion, The Farewell is actually a really good movie in terms of highlighting the struggles between Chinese Americans and their relatives from the other side of the world. Me personally, as a Chinese American, I have family that's from there too. And when we have get-togethers, I can see the differences in like cultural values that we have from each other. Sometimes when they tell me things, I take it the wrong way, but it's just their way of communicating things to me. So, just because someone identifies as like a Chinese American or Chinese in that matter, doesn't really necessarily mean they retain, their country's original cultural beliefs because they've been assimilated. Because I personally have been assimilated here for being here for so long at such a young age, just like Billy. So, yeah, and basically to wrap it up. Like I said, The Farewell is a great movie for understanding the struggles between, Chinese Americans and their people back home. And this could apply to any other culture. So I think this is a movie worth watching for any of you interested. And yeah, and that's about it. So